Hello sew buddies, welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm going to be teaching you how to make your own bias binding. Biases are especially important when you want to cover fray edges, and they can also be used for decorative purposes in decorating fashion pieces. Functionally they are good for covering up fray edges. So the first thing I'm going to do here is to mark out my piece of fabric like so. Here I'm using a 15 inches by 15 inches fabric. You want to use a perfect square fabric. Using an 18 inches by 18 inches will give you exactly 3 yards. So the next thing I've gone ahead to do is to mark out a diagonal line at an angle of 45 degrees. That's a perfect bias angle. Then I've gone ahead to cut this out like you're seeing me do. After this, the next thing I've gone ahead to do is to join these two sides together with the right side facing right side. I'm going to pin this down and then stitch it on a 0.5 inch seam allowance. After stitching it down, I've gone ahead to trim off the excess fabric like you're seeing me do to help reduce bulk. Then the next thing I'm doing here is to mark out the width of the bias binding. Here I'm using a 2 inches width for my bias binding. You can actually make it a 1.5 or even 3 inches depending on what you want to create, depending on your style. You can make it slimmer or you can make it wider. Here I'm using a 2 inches width bias binding. I'm using 2 inches for this bias binding. But after folding it the way a bias should be, it's going to give me exactly 1 inch. So yeah, I've gone ahead to mark this out in different places like you're seeing me do. Mind you, you can actually make your fabric way wider if you want plenty length of a bias binding. So yeah, I'm joining the two sides together, making sure that the lines intersect at a 0.5, that's which is my seam allowance that I'll be using to join these two pieces. They intercept at 0.5 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to go ahead and pin this down and then stitch it on my sewing machine. Now you do not want to start it from the edge. You want to start it, make sure that the lines cross each other just at that 0.5 inch intersection. After this, I'm going to stitch this down. So yeah, I'm done stitching down. I've also trimmed off the excess allowance, the seam allowance, to reduce bulk, and I'm just cutting out the lines like so. Now it's going to give you a spiral line, and that is what I've created. So I've cut out this line. It's a continuous bias, and measuring it out is almost 3 inches. Remember I said using an 18 inches by 18 inches square fabric will give you exactly 3 inches. So now to create the bias fold without a bias maker, I've improvised by using a sewing needle. Now you want to use something long enough so that it can give you the width you want. So the 2 points on this white fabric is exactly 1 inch. So I've gone under it to pin the needle like you're seeing me do, to pin that needle to form a bridge on the fabric. Now to start your bias fold, you want to go in with a pressing iron, preferably a steam iron. You want to go in with your iron, fold the fabric into 2 equal halves like you've seen me do, and then you fold using 0.5 inch seam on one side. The 0.5 inch seam is just going to meet exactly at that center fold. So you want to fold like so, and then you do the same for the other side of the bias. Now after I've done this, I'll slip it under that needle, under the bridge. Just slip it gently so that it does not spoil the fold. So remember I said that's ironing. You ironing it manually is like a starter. Now This bridge here, this needle is going to guide the rest of the length of the bias to now form this fold. This method is very important, is very beneficial, especially if you don't have a bias maker. You can use this to make your bias at home. Now after you've created the fold with that needle, the last step is to fold it into two like so. This step is optional. If you want to store your bias so that it doesn't unravel or unfold, it's very important to do this final step. But then if you want to use it immediately or you're ready for use, you can just skip this step. If you're enjoying this tutorial, please do not forget to hit that subscribe button, click on the notification icon. You can also like this video. Thank you so much for your support so far. Thank you to my old subscribers for always coming back to watch my videos. Thank you to my new subscribers for joining this wonderful family. With this, your bias is very much ready. You see how easy it is to make your own bias binding, so you do not have to spend so much buying bias, especially if it doesn't match. Now this is what our final bias binding looks like. Thank you so much for watching this video tutorial, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.